$20,000 in annual sales. This junior high school dropout is fired. Richard throws the documents on my desk and declares arrogantly, I check what was thrown and see it's last year's performance report of mine. No, this is no excuse. Incompetence has no place in this company. Pack up your things and leave immediately. Whatever I say in response, Richard doesn't listen at all. Seeing his attitude, I realize further discussion is pointless. I've worked hard to develop this company for the previous owner, but enough is enough. However, mistaking $220,000 in sales is quite the blunder. I almost burst out laughing but managed to leave the CEO's office with my head down. Thanks for everything, I say, unable to hold back my laughter. He probably thought I was on the verge of tears. He nodded with great satisfaction. I'm Daniel Moore, 46 years old. I currently work in a small company mainly handling sales. This company has about 10 employees, and I joined when the previous owner took me in. In fact, I dropped out of high school. The reason is quite common. My parents died in an accident, and I was left all alone, not knowing what to do. The previous owner, who had lived nearby when I was a kid, reached out to me. Without him, I don't know where I'd be or what I'd be doing now. That's why I was determined to contribute to this company in any way I could. However, what I could do was limited. After all, I'm a high school dropout with no formal education. The only things I can boast about are my physical strength and determination, so I use my passion to drive sales. For the past 30 years, I've focused solely on moving forward and working hard. Now, as I've gotten older, I can't rely solely on youthful enthusiasm to get the job done. Understanding this, I started focusing on language studies in my mid-20s due to various coincidences. I had never put much effort into studying before. However, that doesn't mean I disliked studying. On the contrary, becoming an adult early meant I had less time. Language learning was the most cost-effective study, so I used my spare time after work to focus on it. Thanks to that, I was living a seemingly successful life, but this changed when the previous owner passed away 2 years ago. Hey, junior high school dropout. My dad might have been kind, but I'm not. Just because you've been here a long time doesn't mean you'll get special treatment. This was Richard Moore, the son of the previous owner who took over as the second-generation boss. Richard and I are both 46 years old. We used to get along well in our younger days, but our relationship soared after we turned 30. I'm not sure why. Richard just started hating me for some reason. We hadn't even spoken much in recent years, but now that he's the new boss, we can't avoid talking. However, when we finally did talk, Richard was constantly hostile towards me. Richard, our president, it's true I dropped out of high school, but I've worked here for 30 years. At this age, education doesn't seem that relevant. What? Are you talking back to me? I graduated from a top university's business school. Don't think you're important just because we're the same age and have known each other for a long time. That's not what I meant. Every time we meet, Richard throws such sarcastic remarks. If I dared to call him by his name like in the old days, he'd glare at me with a furious look. And when another employee called him the second-generation boss, he got angry and gave a long lecture. So calling him president is the only option. When I inadvertently called him Richard, I broke into a nervous smile, sweating internally. All right, here you go, Mr. High School Dropout. You have a sales meeting first thing tomorrow morning. Go through these materials. A sales meeting first thing in the morning? Yeah, feel free to go directly. I glanced over the documents handed to me. The company mentioned is on the opposite side from my home, across our office, and it was originally someone else's coverage. Clearly, a way to harass me. Oh, and make sure to correct any mistakes by today. I made the materials, so they should be fine. However, I have plans to be out until the evening. Him saying that meant he intentionally left some errors, but I was just about to head out for a sales call. Pointing this out, even though it felt pointless, Richard reacted dramatically. Sorry, is that so? Well, you'll have to work overtime, but it can't be helped. I'm counting on you, got it? I sighed openly at his reaction. It has become routine for him to dump work on me during busy times. Reluctantly, I stuffed the documents into my bag. It was a bit tight, but I adjusted my plans to go straight home. I couldn't let his harassment cause trouble outside the company. By the way, I should mention I shredded the documents you left yesterday. So that's why the materials for today's meeting were missing this morning. I didn't realize they were for today. I didn't expect such important documents to be left out. I had them properly filed, but it's okay. I wasn't planning to use paper documents for the meeting anyway. They were just for my reference. As if it were an afterthought, Richard revealed another harassment tactic. But such harassment is a daily occurrence. Naturally, I had countermeasures. However, Richard seemed displeased with my response. He answered without hiding his displeased expression. "All right then, that's good. Yes, well, I don't have much time, so excuse me." Before the next sarcastic remark could come, I quickly left the office. There was still some time before the meeting, so I decided to stop by a nearby coffee shop. While traveling, I'd review the documents and prepare for today's meeting. Because of Richard's harassment, I had to open my laptop to check the materials. I've mainly been doing outside sales work until now, but lately, due to changing times, I've been doing more meetings in the office. As a result, I've spent more time at my desk compared to before. Richard probably thought I was slacking off because of this, so he started frequently assigning me tasks like material documentation. "Hey, get this document done by the afternoon." Me again. Of course, material documentation is a basic office task, right? Well, it might be difficult for a high school dropout, though. I sighed softly at Richard, who snorted mockingly. To be honest, in spite of my career, I wasn't very skilled with computers. Of course, I could handle basic emails and presentation tools. However, creating documents was another story, and I often had to ask subordinates or colleagues for help. Because of that, the tasks Richard dumped on me felt heavier than usual. "I actually have plans later." "Is that so? But I'm busier than you." I mentioned my upcoming meeting, but such words had no effect on Richard. His eyes narrowed as if to suggest I was just pretending to be busy and continued. "Just to be clear, don't slack off. I get it. I'll draft by myself this time again. Yeah, I won't tolerate you pushing it off on other employees like last time. If you slack off, you'll get a pay cut." Satisfied with his reminder, Richard returned to his office. Who is really shirking their responsibilities here? Swallowing those words, I gave a vague reply and watched him leave. One day, while I was finishing a business meeting and compiling a report, Richard came over with a nasty grin on his face. "I need to talk to you. Come to the president's office now." Talk? I couldn't think of any reason, so I was puzzled. What could this be about? There's no way Richard would be giving me a bonus, and I didn't recall making any big mistakes. But the reason was something I couldn't have imagined. When I entered the president's office, Richard immediately turned around with a triumphant smile. "I saw your performance. For someone who acts so high and mighty, what are these numbers?" "Numbers don't lie. Down $20,000 in annual sales. You're a high school dropout and a thief. You're fired." Richard threw the documents on the desk at me and arrogantly declared. I checked what was thrown at me and saw it was my performance report from last year. Did he really come to such an outrageous conclusion from this? Getting paid with such sales numbers. How shameless. How much did you take advantage of my dad's kindness? "No, this is..." I immediately tried to correct Richard's misunderstanding, but he cut me off and continued. "No excuses. Incompetence has no place in this company. Pack up your things and leave immediately." Whatever I said in response, Richard wouldn't listen. On the contrary, my words only seemed to fuel his anger. Understood. Seeing Richard's attitude, I realized further discussion was pointless. I silently apologized to the previous owner in my heart. I no longer felt I could support this foolish second-generation president. I had worked hard to develop the company for the previous owner, but enough was enough. However, mistaking $20,000 in sales was quite the blunder. I almost burst out laughing and left the CEO's office with my head down. "Thank you for everything." "No problem." Unable to hold back my laughter, Richard probably thought I was on the verge of tears. He nodded with great satisfaction. Alone, I quietly rechecked the documents that were thrown at me. Sure enough, the figure of $20,000 was written there. But Richard made one huge mistake. This unit is in hundreds. Yes, my annual sales were $2 million, not $20,000. But $2 million, our company is by no means large, so I was the top earner in sales. Even though Richard mocked me for being a high school dropout, only a few employees in our company were college graduates. Richard himself was a college graduate, but the majority were high school graduates. In our company, I was the core of the recently emphasized overseas business. The reason was simple. I was the best at speaking French. How does Richard plan to continue this project, which is finally gaining momentum, without me? Welcome back, Daniel. What did the boss say? Oh, he fired me. What? He said I'm a $20,000 salary thief. Back at my desk, I told my colleague Taylor exactly what had happened. He tried to suppress his laughter, his shoulders shaking. What? A salary thief? You? Yeah, so I'm going to submit my resignation now. Where's the template? Everyone in the office burst out laughing at our conversation. I couldn't help but laugh too. Well, that's it for me. I'm out of here today. Take care. Wait, don't leave us. We're resigning too. Funny. Do whatever you want. After that, we all wrote our resignation letters and forms while laughing. Once everyone was done, I headed to the CEO's office as the representative. Richard, as usual, wore a triumphant smile. Did you write it? Don't worry, I'll accept it immediately. Thanks, and by the way, I'm kind enough to list it as a company layoff, not a disciplinary dismissal. This won't affect your employment history. He couldn't fire me for such a baseless reason anyway. Suppressing my laughter at his misguided kindness, I handed over the documents. Richard's expression twisted in surprise at the unexpected number of papers. You wrote this many. I wondered why you took so long, but this is too many. No, these are from all the employees. What? Everyone wants to resign. Please check them. As I said this, Richard hurriedly flipped through the documents. Seeing that all the names were different, he shouted in shock. Wait, what the hell is going on here? What do you mean? This is everyone's decision. Richard grabbed me, violently shaking me back and forth, making me feel dizzy. Did you instigate this? Are you trying to undermine me? Please stop. I didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, ask them yourself. When they heard I was resigning, they all chose to join me. As I pushed him away and protested, Richard shoved me aside and stormed out of the office. His awkward retreat made me laugh. After a while, Richard returned, breathing heavily with rage. Is this some kind of joke? It's not a joke. You saw it with your own eyes, didn't you? Isn't that the truth? You're trying to set me up. Don't think you'll get away with this. Richard glared at me with hateful eyes, but I wasn't afraid at all. Whatever I say, you won't believe me, right? They genuinely want to resign. If you fire the company's top earner, the business won't survive. Top earner. That's a joke. There's no way someone with $20,000 in annual sales is the top performer. Don't you realize it yet? Check this report again. The $20,000 is not in dollars, it's in hundreds. What? Richard snatched the documents he had thrown at me and reviewed them repeatedly. When he realized I was telling the truth, he began to tremble. That can't be. The other reports were in dollars, so why? Since last year, we've had more transactions in dollars. The accounting department found it tedious to constantly convert, so they made the switch. They did confirm this with you, didn't they? His usual work attitude was the worst. Resting on his title as president, he did almost no actual work. Even for documents that needed his review, he barely glanced at them. This kind of sloppy work led to situations like this. My resignation will be processed as a company layoff, right? Please take care of the rest. Wait, let's talk for a bit. No, I have nothing more to say. Here are my resignation and the resignation requests from other employees. Please handle everything. Wait. Ignoring Richard's attempts to stop me, I forcibly left the president's office. The future of this company was no longer my concern, but I didn't need to inform our clients. Lost in thought, I muttered to myself, although the company was no longer my concern, I couldn't let our clients suffer due to the chaos of everyone leaving. Business deals would likely fall through, so I decided to start with a celebratory drink and walked into my usual liquor store. It was a company layoff. I had worked there for 30 years, so I should be entitled to a severance package, but I didn't expect anything from Richard. As expected, my final paycheck only included a few extra cents with no separate deposit. The lack of severance wasn't illegal, so I couldn't sue. I cited as pettiness. However, thinking about the future of the company, they probably couldn't afford to pay such money anyway. Fortunately, I'm not married, and my hobbies are work and studying. I often thought about work even on my days off, so I have plenty of savings. Also, I'm a high school dropout, so I'm resilient in the face of adversity. Maybe I'll take it easy for a while and travel in luxury. It wouldn't be bad to stretch my wings and enjoy some freedom for the first time in 30 years. So I decided to enjoy a leisurely period of unemployment. I traveled, enjoyed nature, and thoroughly healed my mind and body. Time flew by, and before I knew it, a month had already passed. I thought about finding a new job, but I didn't have the energy to start working yet. I continued to read books I had piled up and clean my house. Once the books were gone and the house was tidy, I felt refreshed. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed since I left my job. At that point, I had to face reality. I reluctantly started browsing job sites, thinking it was time to find a new job. However, I couldn't find a job that felt right. Given my age, switching to a different industry was tough, so I looked in the same field. But the jobs that matched my criteria had issues like being too far away or offering a lower salary. Prepared for a long-term search while collecting unemployment benefits, I carefully considered my options. Before I could narrow down my choices, I received a call. "It's been a while. What are you up to?" It was David, who had quit the company at the same time I did. Hearing his familiar tone made me laugh. "Long time no see. I'm job hunting. Being 46 and unemployed isn't exactly funny." "Ha, that's a good one. I wanted to run something by you." David usually had a light-hearted manner, but on the phone his voice, though laughing, was serious. "How about starting a company with us?" "A company?" "Yeah, we're gathering our former colleagues to make a big hit. Although I had quit that company on a whim, the idea of just finding another random job felt like losing to Richard, and I didn't like that. So David's proposal to start a company together and build something much better than Richard's was appealing. Almost everyone I've talked to has agreed. Some have already found other jobs, though. Let's show that second-generation boss what we're capable of. That sounds like it could be fun. Right, so you're in, Daniel? I quickly agreed to his proposal. At my age, starting anew at a different company and building relationships from scratch felt daunting. Most importantly, starting a new company with David sounded exciting. From that day, I began preparing for the new venture. Starting a company alone is easy, just a piece of paperwork, but launching a company with employees requires careful planning. Together with David, we explored ways to ensure everyone felt secure. However, during that time, an unexpected visitor appeared at my door. "Is this the residence of Daniel Moore?" "Yes, what can I do for you?" It was a police officer in uniform. He was from the police department of a different region than where I lived, which made me tense up. "It's about Richard Davis." "Richard?" "Yes, during a recent investigation, he's been suspected of embezzlement and destruction of private documents." I was even more shocked by what the officer told me next. It seemed Richard had been embezzling company funds. "We received an anonymous tip," the officer continued. "They said the company's financial records were opaque, with unrecorded expenses and disappearing sales. There were many discrepancies." "I see. You all resigned from that company a few months ago, correct?" I nodded honestly. He asked a few questions, mostly verification, mentioning he was asking the same questions to other former employees. "Thank you. Now for the next question." The conversation then moved to the destruction of private documents. Though I've known Richard since childhood, I'm not a member of his family, so I wondered why this was brought to me. I urged the officer to continue, and the answer quickly became clear. The document in question is Mr. Davis's father's will. According to the will, the company Richard is currently running was originally meant to be inherited by you. Excuse me, I couldn't help but let out a surprised exclamation at this unexpected revelation. The previous owner had been very kind to me, and I knew he was fond of me, but I never imagined his intention for me to take over the company. After his father passed away, Richard saw the will and couldn't accept its contents, so he destroyed it. Since you are the intended heir, we needed to inform you. I see. The officer continued calmly, as if simply reporting the facts, and ended with a faint smile, likely his personal opinion. Considering the current situation, that company won't last long. Personally, I'd recommend letting it go. Yes, that's my plan. Thank you for your cooperation. We may contact you at this number later, so please be available if we do. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the sofa. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, dealing with the police was nerve-wracking. Richard really did something outrageous, I thought, reminiscing about my ex-friend whose contact information I had long since deleted. But the next morning, my sleep was rudely interrupted. "Hey, coward, I know you're in there. Get out here now." The voice, unconcerned with disturbing the neighbors, belonged to none other than Richard. He banged on the door, forcing me to scramble out of bed. "Richard, what are you doing here so early in the morning?" "What am I doing? How can you ask that?" "Because of you, my life is in ruins." Richard stood at the door, furious, his rage having stripped him of all reason. He responded with increasing anger, no matter what I said. "If I'm this miserable, you should be too. That's only fair. I don't care. You chose to commit crimes, and now you're paying the price. Don't drag me into it." Somehow, I managed to escape and ran breathlessly into the nearest corner shop. The employees and customers were shocked, but I had no time to worry about them. Seeing my frantic state and Richard's aggressive pursuit, the store clerk called the police. Finally, I was freed from Richard's grasp. As a result of the call, Richard was arrested and received a prison sentence. Given his frequent run-ins with the law recently, this was hardly surprising. Though his sentence wasn't long, he was soon released. However, Richard never showed up in front of me again. I had worried about possible retaliation, but it was unfounded. Apparently, after his release, Richard disappeared into obscurity, burdened by lingering debts. With no one to turn to, he ultimately resorted to dealing with loan sharks. No one knows what happened to Richard, who ended up chased by debt collectors and isolated. Well, it seems like the president got what he deserved. Yeah, it does. I talked about this with David, my former colleague and now co-partner, over a beer. Quitting when we did was the right move. If we hadn't, we might have gone down with a sinking ship. Cannot agree more. It was a ridiculous accusation, but the timing worked out well. Our company's doing well. With Richard's company going bankrupt, many of their clients came to us, boosting our business significantly. Starting from scratch, we still have a lot to build, but we're growing steadily, improving our connections and facilities every day. Moreover, the overseas companies I used to handle wanted to continue working with us because of my efforts. While it's still challenging given our current size, we plan to resume those deals once we've grown enough. Looks like we're finally at the starting line. Right? Let's put even more effort into this. There are still piles of challenges ahead to further develop our company and achieve even greater happiness. I'll keep giving my